Today we're going to do a little creativity exercise to hone our art skills and our creative muscle, and hopefully do a little bit of ugly art and maybe also some not so ugly art as well. The only thing you'll need is some paper as well as some art materials. No limitation here, whatever it is that feels comfortable for you. If you don't know me, my name is Marie-Noëlle. I'm an artist and illustrator, also a top teacher on Skillshare, which is the sponsor of our video and which I'll talk about in a little bit. I love to create art that is delicate, kind of dreamlike, and sometimes a little dark. And what I love to teach most is how to get creative and how to get out of our own way in order to cultivate that creative mindset that helps you feel a little bit more free, a little bit more light, and a little bit more playful when you're creating something in your sketchbook. If you don't have time today to join in on the exercise, but you'd like to support the channel, then hit like and subscribe so that you can get notification for when my next video is out and hopefully join in then. That being said, let's get started. Grab your art materials, grab your paper, and let's get to it. So if you watched my other video called The Power of Ugly Art or Your Ugly Art Holds Secrets, we're kind of going to keep developing some of the ideas that we touched on upon those videos. If you haven't seen those, not a problem, you can start with this one. But basically, I just want you to know that today we're going to be doing a bunch of drawings, but we're going to also include ugly drawings as well, because I think that they are very valuable and very precious, and it's something that we are often scared of, but it's not something that needs to be something filled with fear. And it can be instead filled with a little bit of playfulness, a little bit of levity, and also an acceptance that that's also part of the process. So that being said, what we're going to do today is we're going to be drawing some trees. So before I tell you anything about what kind of tree we're going to make, I'm going to ask you to grab the first tool that calls to you or that appeals to you. I don't know, I just grabbed this slate gray colored pencil, and we're going to draw a tree of any sort, okay? So I'm going to start over here, and all I know is I'm drawing a tree. So maybe there's like, a split trunk. And then, maybe there's like a shape of its leaves. But then maybe I have some other little branches that are kind of seen in some parts. And maybe I'll just color in the rest of, maybe I'll do one more. So this one kind of does that. And I'm realizing, okay, I'm doing this all in one color, but of course if you wanted to do multiple colors, you could. I'm kind of using this as I would like a graphite pencil or something, So nothing really complicated, but maybe I do want to have some little leaves poking out. So even though I initially made this very round shape, what if I add a little bit more detail there? And the point of this one is I just want you to start drawing right away. And that's why I didn't ask you to sketch. I didn't ask you to think about what you were going to draw. It's really just what comes out first. And it might be something really ugly. Most likely it will be. I'm going to be honest. I'm not a huge fan of the one that I am making right now. But that's okay, because that's not the point. We just want to kind of just move into the realm of action, because that's often the easiest way of overcoming the hurdles of fear and perfectionism, is just to get started. And maybe I'll even add like a tiny little bunch of leaves over here. Something like that. Okay, And then maybe I'll put it on like, you know, some sort of surface. All right, so that's my first tree. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to try to draw the ugliest tree possible. I want you to attempt to go super ugly, to make a super ugly drawing. So don't even know what I'm going to start with. Okay, maybe I'll start with this yellow olive. And I'm just going to think of maybe some scribbles. Like, okay, not going to put really much care into this tree. It's just going to be like a scribbly mess. And then I'll have a trunk and I'll make the lines come out. And then, I don't know, maybe I can add some more weird scribbles in there. Does this even look like a tree? I'm still not totally sure. I'm gonna try to add a little bit of color in the trunk so that you kind of still notice that it's a tree. That's pretty bad. Okay, let's see if I can get worse. I'm gonna actually also go for another gray. I don't know what it is today, but you know, sometimes you shouldn't question your intuition if you just keep going for a color, even if it seems like on the surface of it a boring color. To me, gray is actually not boring at all. It's really beautiful and it can be really fun. So I'm going to go with that. And if I'm thinking of like another ugly tree, how can I make this ugly? You know what? I might add some paint. Ooh, I almost dipped this in my candle, which is not going to work. Okay. I'm going to grab a little bit of this color, which I think I'm not a super fan of. And I'm just going to make some sort of watercolor shape here. And then I'm gonna maybe add a very thick trunk and with some scribbly grass. And is that recognizable as a tree? It's kind of recognizable as a tree. Gonna add some colored pencil to that. Okay, this is making it a little uglier. What about... Yeah, okay, now I'm getting to something a little uglier. Not liking these textures. It's kind of just one blobby mess. Maybe I'll add some more watercolor over the top. See what that does. All right. I hope that you've been enjoying playing along with this exercise, and maybe as you continue to explore these principles that we've been trying out, I wanted to take a quick moment to talk about the sponsor of our video, which I'm very happy to be partnered with, which is Skillshare. I'm actually a top teacher on the platform, and I have been for a number of years. It's a platform that I love and that I stand by, and if you've enjoyed some of these videos that I've made on YouTube and you want to delve a little bit further and deeper into these concepts of getting out of your own way in order to feel fully creative, of developing and honing your creativity, as well as making art a fun and playful endeavor that isn't full of stress and anxiety and perfectionism, then you can check out the classes that I have on there. If you don't know Skillshare, it's a platform for and by creatives where you can access thousands of classes by industry experts where you can learn a range of different creative topics from drawing and painting and illustration, animation, photography, graphic design, productivity, or even sewing. The premise is really to learn by doing. And so each class will invite you to join in a creative project that you develop and then that you can submit in the project section where you can get feedback from the teacher and also fellow creatives in the community. There are many different ways of finding the right class for you. Actually, there was recently an updated and revised version of the classification system so that you can better find the classes that you want. And they've even added new categories, including my personal favorite, which is creativity and inspiration. But there are also other ways of finding classes. For example, there are learning paths, a curated sequential list of classes that you go through in order to acquire a specific skill set. An example of that is this learning path about watercolor, which personally is a medium that I love and always want to learn more about. On my end, I actually also offer an in-depth course about watercolor where I teach you not only a technique, but also a core principle of watercolor, which is the number one thing that I wish that I had learned right when I started working with watercolor, and that really helps you understand how watercolor works, how pigments work, and enables you to create the kinds of effects and textures that you want with watercolor, which is notoriously unpredictable and difficult to control. So if any of this sounds intriguing or piques your curiosity, especially at this time of year, which is the fall, which is one of these back to school boost in learning times of the year, then the first 500 people to click the link in my description will receive 1 month free trial of Skillshare so you can test it out and see what it is that you might find there and learn there and get inspired by. All right, our video is not done. Let's continue with the end of our creativity exercise today. I hope that you've been painting along as I was chatting, and let's move on to the next part. We're going to now try to make the most beautiful tree drawing that you've ever seen. Notice how when I say that, how does your body react initially to that? You know, my impression is that, and I'll talk about my own experience, let me know in the comments if you have a different experience, but when I said, okay, we are going to draw the ugliest drawing of a tree, I actually had a little bit of nervousness that I wasn't going to be able to make it as ugly as possible. But then my second thought was, this is so absurd that I'm nervous about creating the ugliest drawing. It's a little bit confusing. And so my second thought was kind of like, well, whatever, I'm just going to try to make something ugly. And I should be able to make something ugly because I have in the past made ugly drawings. But notice how different that is to when I say our next task is to make the most beautiful drawing of a tree. Oof. So in that one, there's definitely nervousness about how beautiful I'm going to be able to make it. And I don't have a second thing of like, oh, well, it doesn't really matter because it's supposed to be ugly. In this case, it's like, oh no, this is actually really important because my task is I need to make this beautiful, right? Just notice those differences. Notice how maybe your body is tensed up, maybe how you're gripping or holding your breath. And I'm going to ask that you try to just give it your best effort. It might not be the most beautiful tree in the world, but again, we're not going to stay with just one. We're going to have a few different iterations. So think about what the most beautiful tree drawing would be for you. So if I think of a beautiful tree, I love trees that have like wispy branches, and the sound of the wind in the leaves is one of my most favorite sounds in the world. So having something that's kind of wispy and where, you know, the leaves and the branches sway in the wind is something that's really beautiful to me. So I'm going to just try to go with that, and we're going to see where that goes. So Another thing I'm noticing is like, I do like trees that are kind of gnarly or not just necessarily straight. So I'm going to try to make it maybe a little bit more angled. But that wispiness is the thing that I want to put into my tree, into my most beautiful tree that I can imagine. You know, you might be, as you're drawing, be like, ooh, I don't know, this isn't really going where I wanted it to go. I don't know if this is beautiful. That's okay. Just notice that. And anchor back into the sensations of what you're doing. I think that's a very, very easy way to not get distracted by all the things that happen in our minds. So I'm going to try to do a little bit of wispiness, maybe even more wispiness. And actually, I don't know if you've noticed, but this tree, I'm actually making it without any leaves. To be fair, I do love trees in winter. I do find the branches to be really lovely and inspiring. But I'm really going to try to put in this effort to capture that sense that I love about beautiful trees. And maybe I'm going to make the trunk a little bigger. But I already noticed that because I'm trying to make this tree beautiful, there's a little bit more presence, at least for me. Because I'm just really focused on, okay, what line is it that I want to do? On the other hand, the thing is, I've had a lot of practice working with trying to make beautiful drawings and being terrified when they become ugly. So I have a little bit less of that fear than I used to. I will say this, if you are really disappointed with what you're making, that's okay. Remember, that's part of the process. It's often by doing thousands of ugly drawings that we get to the ones that we love. Okay. I'm pretty happy with that. But now I'm going to ask myself the question, is this really the most beautiful tree drawing you've ever seen? Honestly, if I took this drawing and I was rating it against absolutely every single tree illustration and drawing and painting that has ever been made, I'm not sure it would cut it in the top 10, you know? So that's also interesting, okay, to be like, okay, well, I'm happy with it, but it's not the most beautiful tree drawing in the world. Okay, what if I try something else? So then we're going to do another more beautiful tree. This one has to be way more beautiful than this first one. Notice how maybe you might get even more stressed out about it. I'm going to maybe do some watercolor here. Okay, so I want to make the most beautiful tree. And I did something in winter, but I'm going to try to do something that's a little bit more spring-like. And you can see, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but this watercolor actually has some neon in it. Maybe which gives it a little bit more spring feeling. I'm just going to try to make some sort of shape of a tree. And then maybe this one will have a trunk that leans just a little bit. Just a little bit, so a leaning trunk. And maybe it would have a little bit of texture in it. And I'm going to let the watercolor dry at the same time. I don't know if you can kind of see those marks. I maybe should have pressed a little harder. And then, yeah, if we're thinking about like the most beautiful tree, and I kind of did it a little wrong here, but maybe I would have a sense of shadow. So maybe I would have one side that would be slightly darker, like form, because I haven't really done any trees here with any form. So, you know, maybe the most beautiful tree shows the form of the tree. And then maybe it has, you know, weird root systems where you can kind of see the roots coming up. And that's what's allowing it to kind of lean over a little. But then also, maybe what makes it a beautiful tree is the environment it's in, right? So maybe there are some tall grasses or something. And maybe I should, you know, add those in to really give a sense of where this tree is placed. And honestly, like, I have to admit, like, this is not the most beautiful drawing of a tree ever. And so now I'm starting to get nervous because I'm like, I really didn't land this prompt well of creating the most beautiful tree. Did I? Didn't really get there like I was planning to. How about you? Where are you at in this prompt, in this process? You might feel something kind of similar to that, like, well, I've tried really hard, but like, I mean, I think that there are better tree drawings that exist in the world. This is almost dry. So I'm still going to continue trying to save my tree, even though I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it more beautiful. I really want to. So maybe what if I just added, you know, some leaves here, some leaf details. And this is another key that I want you to notice. How many times as you were drawing were you thinking, this is not a very beautiful tree? And did you let that stop you? I know that often, especially when I was starting out, when I would notice these thoughts of like, this is horrific, I really don't like this drawing that I'm making, that would be one of the things that would make me stop trying. Because I'm like, what's the point? There's absolutely no point in me trying to make this the most beautiful drawing. It's already ruined. So notice here how what we're trying to do is we're trying to acknowledge that those thoughts might happen, but we're not letting those be the reason that we stop trying. And that's a very, very important thing, because we need to start separating the negative thoughts that can arise from the behaviors that it leads to. We need to create a little bit of separation, a little bit of distance between those two things. Because when we just listen to those thoughts and act on them in a way that stops the process, we're just comforting those negative thoughts in the worst way possible, in the sense of, okay, you're right, I'm listening to you, I'm not going to try. And then we get really frustrated when we struggle to start drawing again, don't we? So by practicing separating the negative thought and the behavior, you're giving yourself a fighting chance to continue including art in your daily journey or weekly journey. You're making it more likely that you will pick up your drawing tools and draw again next time, even if this time didn't work out. The other benefit of continuing despite negative thoughts is it makes you realize that even when something is ugly, that doesn't mean that it can't become more beautiful. I was not liking where I was going with this one. Right now, I'm liking it way more. I think that adding this texture over to the top of the watercolor somehow did something to it that makes it much more lovely in my eyes. Then again, I still wouldn't say that it's the most beautiful drawing of a tree that was ever made. That's okay. I'm still here trying. We're going to do one more where I'm going to ask you to simply make a tree again. So this time we're not looking for ugliness. We're not looking for beauty. We're just trying to make a tree. Okay? So I'm going to maybe use a strange color just to kind of shake things up a little. And if you want to also try to shake things up with using something you haven't used yet, that's a great opportunity. And I'm just going to play and allow myself to hold both the possibility of ugliness and of beauty within this moment. Maybe I will use my neon pink pencil, just because that seems fun, as the trunk. Oh, it's broken. Okay, maybe I'll have to use another one. No, it'll work. It'll work a little bit. And maybe I'll make this one super leany compared even to the one on the top. Oh, this one's decidedly broken. Let me try to sharpen it a little. Okay, I think that should be good enough. All right. What if I made just a shadow of this tree kind of underneath here and here, as though we had light from the top? And actually, I should probably do it in front of it as well. I kind of like the psychedelic version of this, but the purple is kind of a little messy, which is, it's okay, but what if I just added, you know, maybe some texture in there? Just maybe something to give it a little bit Kind of looks like a, what do you call it? I don't know, reminds me of an artichoke. Not the best association, I have to admit. I think I actually liked it before I added the texture, so now I'm feeling like I'm contending with some more ugliness, even though before I liked it a little bit better. So what can I do? Maybe I'll come in here with some watercolor. Just see what happens if I do that. I kind of like the overlay here of the different colors. Yes, it still looks kind of like an artichoke, but there's something else about it that I think is a little nicer than it was earlier. I might not get to a place where I think it's really nice, but in holding the possibility of it being both ugly and beautiful, it also gave me more freedom to try things out. And that's a really, really important aspect, especially if you want to allow yourself to be creative within your sketchbook. Now that we're here and we've done all these experiments, we've done a tree with just, jumping right in, making one, no hesitation, just trying and seeing what the first thing that comes out. Then trying to make an ugly tree, and then maybe an uglier tree, and maybe a third ugly tree if you had a little bit more time and did that. Then we went into beauty and tried to channel beauty and make the most beautiful drawing of a tree that you could possibly imagine. I have to say, I do quite like these. They have some beauty in it. Are they the most beautiful drawing in the world of a tree? Not really. But they're beautiful enough. And that's another thing that I want you to notice, that when you hear these thoughts internally of, I need to make something extremely beautiful, ask yourself, is it okay if it's beautiful enough? What can make it enough? And then finally, we did another tree where we tried to hold both the concept of ugliness and beauty simultaneously, allowing both of those possibilities to arise. And when you allow that, you sometimes can get some lovely surprises. It may not be the most beautiful tree, but I don't think I would get to this one if I hadn't allowed myself to explore all of these. And on the other hand, look at all of them put together. Isn't there something really wholesome with this allowance of both beauty and ugliness to live together within one forest? I really like that idea. And I hope that you got a sense of how it's okay to create the ugly drawings. It's okay to do drawings that are a little nicer, even if they're not the most beautiful. And it's okay to create drawings that are somewhere in the middle. And there's something beautiful in creating a forest that welcomes all of those things. And that's your sketchbook. Allow your sketchbook to be a place where all of these are welcome. Thank you so much for joining in our exercise today. I hope that you enjoyed the creative mess that we made and that you take a few little lessons with you in your back pocket for next time. If you want to support the channel, obviously liking and subscribing is a great way of showing that you'd like me to create more videos like this for you, where we can crack open our sketchbooks, get messy, get creative, do surprising things and have fun with all of it. If you want to connect with me in other ways, of course, like I said, you can find me on Skillshare, where I offer more in-depth classes around these topics, but also on Patreon, which is a smaller community where I do monthly live drawing sessions, as well as in-depth sketchbook tours where I kind of talk through my process and what goes into the different types of artworks that I create. And finally, you can also connect with me on Instagram, obviously. So I hope to see you there, here, on any of the platforms. And most of all, I hope you keep on creating. Don't give up. Don't let your fear and your perfectionism get in the way of action, which is just to crack open that sketchbook and get messy with your art materials. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next video.